Welcome to Pet Business Disruptors. I'm Clayton and I'm here today with Kate Hendry, who is the owner and founder of Finbo Studios, a pet brand marketing company. Welcome, Kate.
Hey, it's nice to be here.
It was nice to be on the other end of a computer.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Kate, tell us what you do, tell us what your company does, and tell us why what you do makes such a benefit to pet related businesses.
Okay, cool. So Finbo Studio it's a brand agency. So we build everything into brand. Everything that your brand is and stands for. So it's the strategy, the design, the website, basically everything you can think of that your brand is. All those lovely intangible assets, squeezing them together and making them basically present your brand way in the best possible way, and essentially increase traffic to your brand, get noticed by the right people, and have people buy your products or buy your services.
So when you say brand, do you mean like you create, let's say I've got the company name, and what you create the logos? Do you create the campaigns? Like what level does that go to?
So yes, all of the above. So yeah, a lot of people just sort of see it as the logo, but it does go a lot deeper. So we do, when someone comes to us for a brand, in essence, it will be the visuals plus the strategy plus anything else that is needed to essentially push that brand out there. So whether that's a website, whether that's some marketing collateral, whether it's ads, whether it's something for social media, we can do all of the above. Anything that essentially the outside sees and gives them a perception of your brand is what we do.
Okay, so let's say I'm a brand. Like, just walk me through the process of how you go about building out the brand and how you go about building out the logo, what sort of information you need from people, what it is that you actually talk to people about doing and do.
So the first thing I would ask you is, what is the outcome that you want to achieve? So if you said to me, you are a pet food company and you are particularly sustainable, you are maybe you're made for a certain breed of dog or a certain group of dogs, for example, working dogs or something like that. So we would then craft a brand to strategically speak to owners of working dogs. And we would then come up with the visuals, but all based on what working dog owners either already like or buy into, or their sort of personality traits. There's a lot of strategy. So there's a lot of questions up front and a lot of figuring out the brand, figuring out what it is that you do on the inside that needs to be reflected on the outside. So I try and do it. It's like a conker. This is such a stupid way of explaining it. It's like a 5-year-old way. But you're the conker inside and everybody else sees the shell. So you need to dig into that conker and find out what all the inside stuff is that you need to project outside of that shell, so that everybody understands who you are, what you stand for, why they should go to you over another brand that potentially does a very similar thing, and why they should spend their money with you, essentially. So we do that first, and that's all the strategy stuff. And then we do the visuals. So we'll start off with things like mood boards, where we look at colours and colour psychology. And God, this sounds really boring, doesn't it? It's much more exciting than that in real life, just like.
No, but tell me, let's go deeper. Like something like colour psychology. What is the crack with that? Because obviously, obviously you see people with like different color palettes. So some people go for something nice and bright. Other people go for, let's say, sort of more darker, more like sort of like rurally kind of like colors, like greens and browns. Like just sort of like, why would the brand be pushed towards, let's say, having a bright palette rather than a rural palette, or just like more traditional reds and blues or whatever?
So it depends on your audience, number one, and it depends on sort of the vibe you're going for. So we already have sort of preconditioned ideas of colour. A lot of banks will use things like blue, like a dark blue, and that's associated with trust. Things like oranges and yellows are associated with the energy. Red can be a funny one because we see red in things like danger signs and things like that, but red can also be romantic, it can be quite cutesy, and it can go as deep into how bright or how dark your colour is to how we feel about it. So a dark red will be perceived one way, whereas a really bright red will be perceived a complete opposite way. So that's why we do the strategy. So we figure out what your customer is going to be drawn to. So if you've got like a really youthful, energetic audience, they will be looking at, much sort of brighter, funky, interesting colour palettes, almost maybe things that maybe don't go together and are a bit of a clash. Sometimes that really works for a younger audience. You might have people who are like the working dog audience. It's more of a serious thing. They don't necessarily go more to the playful colours. They might want something more maybe health-based, and we think of things like the light blue or, the greens and things for the eco. So it literally is finding out the vibe and matching it up. So it's it's like a massive jigsaw, the whole thing, and getting your colours out there it's just one piece of the puzzle. The same as the logo, is just one tiny piece of the puzzle.
So do you like when people come to you, let's say, because obviously some people would obviously have like a very preconditioned notion of what they want, but other people maybe not so much. So how much do you advise on, let's say, demographics when it comes to things like colours? Because obviously if you're using purples and light blues and whites and that sort of stuff, like real quite funky stuff, you're obviously, I would imagine, aiming for a younger demographic. But how does sometimes brands don't even understand their own demographic. So how would you sort of advise with
that? This would normally come out, like, again, in the early stages, and I think it's more of, I wouldn't say it's a pushy approach at all. I'm more like a partner type. The way I work is more like a partnership. And, you have it at all different levels. It's like someone might come in and say, I've got some lovely purple curtains and my favourite colour is purple. So I really want purple in my brand. But then, their audience, there may be a really eco-friendly, natural, earthy kind of company, and you're saying, well, purple doesn't really fit. There's not a whole lot of purple out there in the natural environment. So why don't we look at shades, maybe warmer shades because they like purple, and then look at warmer, earthy shades because that fits more with the brand. So there's a little bit of give and take where it'll be somebody's personal preferences and what they feel about their brand, and then looking at it from the outside. The thing that nobody ever, when they're working on their own brand, is ever able to do is to step outside of it. I know personally I'm not either. I can't look from the outside at my brand and go, this and that needs doing. I'll get somebody else. I'll get one of, a designer pal to come and have a look. This, that, and the other, whatever's wrong with it, and then I can fix it. So I suppose it's having that outsider to come in and challenge all of your thoughts around it. And it's not saying you're wrong and this is right. And it's basically saying, here's the strategy and here's how everything should have a purpose. So it's not just about sticking that colour in there because it looks nice. It's what's the purpose, and that makes more sense to people.
I think that you're right that when you're in a business, you like not only don't see your brand, you don't see your own business from the outside as well, and a lot of I think you can be surrounded by people who just yes man you a lot. So actually getting like external like ideas are very useful. But yeah, it's how do you put it to people, like when, let's say, their vision isn't like, let's say, necessarily like matching what their audience is?
It is tough to do. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes people are so set on one thing. But when you explain, in fact, when you put it into comparison with whatever's out there already, you can see the brands that do really, really well have thought about that connection. And when you say, actually, if you look at your brand and your brand is exuding this eco, nature, etc., but it's bright purple, and then you go next to another brand that's really got the eco stuff and it's just nailed, it just makes sense. It doesn't mean that it can't be fun and exciting and vibrant, but it just might not match up with that purple. So and again, there's give and take with it. There's definitely give and take because, I'm not always 100% right with anything, and it's their business. They know it a lot more than I do. And if they've said, well, our customers think purple's blooming amazing because they've bought into it for X amount of years and they always compliment on us on the purple, then, I also have to listen to that. And I also have to understand that. And, we work with it in a way that incorporates it, but still makes it say what you want it to say. The whole thing is a communication. And I think that's what gets lost a lot of the time. People think design's about making stuff look pretty. It's not. It's about you're telling someone something with your visuals. And it has to be right. It has to be snappy. It has to come across in like a second when there's 90 other products doing the same thing on the shelf. You have to have yours saying what you want it to say in a second.
Yeah, because it's a crowded marketplace, and I do like one thing I whine about all the time is like everybody's product looking the same. Everybody's, when you see a group of branded products together, they usually, let's say, if you're a premium end, you normally have a certain vibe. If and it can be a little bit boring and a little bit sameish, I think, for consumers. So it is very hard to actually distinguish products from each other because they all tend to, if it's an eco product, they all have the same colorings. They have a similar sort of feel to it. So how do you like take challenger brands and like really set them apart, like from the sort of crowd?
Something for me that I think is really big is character and having the character of brand. And it's not in such as like a mascot or something. Obviously there is that, but it's how you come across in a way that is different. So if you look at the bigger brands, what have we got? We've got things like Fourth Glade do really well, and they're like quite a natural dog food brand, but they do really well because they're natural and they've got that natural look, but they're not just traditional. They've got like illustrations and things. They've got some quirky stuff going on that does make them a little bit different. So I think if you do look at the bigger pet brands, the ones that do well, they've got something quirky that only they do. I'm definitely in camp that you don't have to be better, you have to be different. And it's all about somehow getting that USP out. And it's hard to sort of say, this is how I do it, because every single business is different. I've got like pages and pages of a notebook of just my crappy little sketches. Sorry for that. But yeah, I'm not a great drawer, but I come up with so many ideas for one brand, for one thing, that it's hard to put your finger on it because you've really got to understand a brand. And when you're really close to it, it's hard to do that. So if it's like handing someone a baby and going like, there you go, style my baby, name my baby. It's mad, isn't it? You've really got to understand them, understand the nuances, understand what it is that makes them different to all these other brands, and then somehow turn that into something that's visual. It's really good when you can position a brand actually to be something different. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say because it's a brand new brand, but I'm working on a new brand at the minute. And the industry that it's in is very masculine, very almost sports orientated. I'm not going to give it away just because my client wouldn't be too pleased. But we've flipped that on its head, and they normally target a certain audience. And we've took that same concept and targeted a bit of a different audience with it and made it more playful. So there's things like that you can do. So it's just about positioning and how you show it to either who you show it to or how you show it to people.
Yeah, but I suppose there is also a dangerous, like the Bud Light thing that happened not that long ago, where you take something which is a very sort of alpha male brand, and then you have, like you give it a different edge, which then sends everyone crazy. I suppose there's a danger that what you don't want to do is alienate your current sort of demographic.
Oh yeah, of course.
I think it can be a little bit of a tightrope though, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's the secret is literally just assessing where you are. Do you want to stick with the same people? Do you need a new audience? If something's working, don't fix it. Don't mess with something that's going to potentially end up biting you on the bum. If you need a new audience, if your current audience either isn't buying into it, or you know, we all grow up, we have different brands, we have different preferences at different stages of life. So understanding that and understanding where people sit and who you want to buy your stuff. If you're selling something that's supposed to be a premium product and you're getting pushback on price, then you know there's a disconnect because you've got the wrong audience, the people who can't essentially afford what you're selling. So you're either not advertising it high enough, or you're advertising to the wrong people. Same if you've got a cheaper brand, you know, it's like Stella, isn't it? It's reassuringly expensive. So if you want a premium brand and it looks premium and it shouts premium, you don't then want to like try and go for a lower end market. So it's balancing who you want, where you want, what you want it to sit, and will it essentially grow your profits? So if you've got that sweet spot between who's buying it, do they get the value of the product? Because that's what it is. It's the value. Figuring out the value, and but definitely don't fix it if it ain't broke.
So what led you when you like decided, like, obviously I'm assuming you studied like branding and that sort of stuff, but what led you to actually be pet industry specific with your like audience targeting?
So personally, I am known as like the crazy dog lady. You know, if I go out, I'll walk my dog. I don't know my neighbours' names, but I know the dog's names. You know, my dog's best friend is a dog called Freddie. I have no idea her name. She knows my name, but I just call her Freddie's mum. So I know pets. You know, I've had boxers, which are notoriously pain in the ass breed to look after. They're absolutely does anything. You know, and I've been there. I've done all the vet stuff. I've struggled with what food to buy. I've struggled with what medication to buy and all the supplements. And I've been, well, I am the consumer, so I've been the one that's confused by it all, or looked at brands and thought, God, that really, you know, I want to grab that brand and shake it up because you can see so much potential in it. I've been doing different kinds of design for, about 17 years. And I'm really showing my age there. But yeah, I came out of uni, did it for X amount of years. I can't do maths. I'm creative. I've been in this for 4, so minus that from whatever I said. I've worked in all kinds of places. I've worked in print. I've worked in flooring, but pets just feels right. And I understand it. And I know I can make a difference to a pet brand because, like I say, I'm the consumer on the other side, and it's bloody good fun. And the people are awesome in the pet industry.
Yeah, I think like the thing is with pet is, especially with branding, is you're appealing to a lot of different people when you brand a pet product. You're appealing to the retailers, you're appealing to the end users, but also like in a different way to how, let's say, you would do if you were like literally just appealing to like me buying for myself. Like you're appealing to almost like a baby market in the sense that you're looking to get people to buy things for certain reasons and with certain functions. So trying to marry all that together is actually, it takes a lot of like knowledge of let's say the end user.
Yeah, definitely. I also have a lizard and a snake. I say I co-parent a lizard and a snake. So there you go. I've got extra sort of more niche knowledge into the reptiles and stuff as well.
What lizard do you got?
I've got a crested gecko.
Oh, okay, nice.
She's called Elizabeth. She's...
but again, I think like just understanding like what's important to like let's say even a crested gecko owner, for example. Like, so if you're selling a gecko diet, what would make them actually buy a product in terms of branding? Is it giving it a natural look? Is it giving it a fun look? You know, because obviously, people who buy crested geckos are very different to people who buy, let's say, ball pythons. You know, so it's understanding the demographic that you're dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where research comes in as well, because I've never owned a ball python, but I wouldn't turn down a ball python project because it's not, I'm not going to say it's near to having a gecko or near to having a dog, but there's a lot of stuff you can find out and there's a lot of research you can do, and you can run surveys and you can look at demographics, you can look at psychographics, all these things. I know from having a crested gecko, she's at an age now, she used to run around after live food, but now she's like getting on a bit. She doesn't want to chase around a cricket. So I wouldn't buy live food for her because all I'd have is a bloody 24/7 alarm clock in a tank. So there's different nuances that people know when they own a pet, and the care and things that they need to be provided that you can find out from communities, from all kinds of places, and from software and things that I use.
So when it comes to the creative process, and let's say you're working with a brand, what do you see as being, let's say, the most important things with creating a new brand and a logo? Is it how it stands out against other products, or is it just generally just making sure that it hits what, let's say, the brand owner wants in terms of presentation?
Firstly, the logo is just a tiny, tiny piece of it. So I think it's always good to kind of put that across, because a lot of people get stuck on logos. Yes, you need one. And yes, it does need to stand out and it needs to say something about the company. But that is one small identifier. So I think it's super important to look at a brand as a whole. And a lot of that is the intangible stuff, the stuff that you can't see. Brand clarity is massive. And I'm finding a lot of people will move away from a brand as they grow. So they'll start off with a certain brand and then they'll get a load of interest, they'll get a load of new customers, and they then come back to look at the brand and go, God, this literally doesn't feel like us anymore. So that's like probably about 50% of my products where they've moved away from a brand. And a whole lot of things. There's been such a massive world shake-up. We've had COVID, we've had financial crisis, and all sorts has gone on. And there's so many things that can move you further away from your brand, and bringing it back to what it is, what it means, is really, really important. And that all that sort of stuff that you find out, that's the intangible stuff, can lead into the more tangible stuff like the visuals. You've got your things like your colours, your layouts, if you use illustration or if you use images, those are all a really big part of the brand. And that can really make you stand out. There was some stuff, I just saw something on Instagram this morning, which was stripping all the colours out of things. So I think one of them was like McDonald's. So if you put a certain shaped box, and if you put a certain shaped chip packet, but you take off the M, you take off the red, you take off the yellow strip, you can still tell what it is. So a lot of people forget that all those other little things that come together to make the brand look like it does are all important. They're all important elements. And when you put them together, people can look at whatever you've put out there with or without a logo and still know it's you.
It's interesting as well, because you said McDonald's, and I always think about when you start a brand, it's also very important to see when you position it in a certain way. So for example, if you're a value brand, an economy brand, let's say, that actually you're pigeonholing your brand into that sector. I think it was they call it the Skoda effect, where Skoda obviously was renowned as being crap East European car, communist car, where they were when I was a kid, there was loads of Skoda jokes, for example. And now they've sort of transformed into what is essentially a Volkswagen. They're owned by Volkswagens, but they still haven't really fully shaken that sort of crap car image. And yeah. I think sometimes when people set up brands, that it's important, sometimes if you have, let's say, a premium end product and you've got a value product, to actually create completely distinct brands, just so people are really aware of your value proposition for your brand. Because it's like McDonald's salads, for example. That's what made me think of it, was talking about McDonald's. I think about McDonald's salads and who the hell buys McDonald's salads? Because it's not like you're going to McDonald's and thinking, you know what, I really fancy something healthy to eat today. I'm going to have a McDonald's salad. You go in and you're buying cheeseburgers because you're an animal like me, you know, and that's what you want. But you're not really buying salads, or like when they do like fruit bags and carrot sticks, you're like, who the hell buys these things, you know? Because if you're in McDonald's, you're not there for healthy food. So trying to then move into the healthy food market as McDonald's is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. And I think sometimes they do that to say something, not necessarily for the product. It's either to shake something off, like McDonald's are the fast, dirty, greasy burger, fast food, etc., which is personally why I think they're amazing. But yeah, they're probably trying to shake off a negative connotation somewhere. So if they have a salad on the menu, despite they might sell like 3 a year, they can, I don't know, turn around and say, well, we offer a salad. It's up to you guys now. We're we've got a social conscience. And sometimes it's just about saying something and less about the product, less about the profit almost. But, we're putting something out there to say, this is not on us. You chose the Big Mac, this is on you. We offered you a salad, but you said no, we didn't want to put fruit bags in your Happy Meals. My 5-year-old would hate me if I did that.
I mean, think how upset a kid would be if you had chicken nuggets in a fruit bag. I mean, God almighty.
Yeah.
But do you advise people on, let's say, like multi-branding, for example, or is it, you just get the gig and they say, oh yeah, this is our product range. Do you assess that level? Because obviously, if you've got a high-end stuff, a high-end thing and a low-end thing, and you brand it all, let's say similar, like even if it's the same name, it can give across the wrong feeling to the consumer.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a big thing at the minute where people feel like they have to have the whole range of things so that they can attract everyone. But if you look at the best brands, they attract a certain type of people and they stick with it. Apple, for example, obviously it's massive brand giant in the world. They don't sell anything cheap. I know because I've probably bloody got all of it and they've made me bankrupt. But Apple wouldn't bring out something really, really cheap just because it's not them. And I think sometimes it's getting people to understand, you don't always want to make your product more accessible, because the exclusivity and the status almost can be really, really valuable to people. So if somebody owns something that is expensive, it's worth more to them, even if it's not in terms of components and pieces and cost and, all those things together. But to them, it's worth more because they paid more for it, and it's worth more in status and things like that. So yeah, I think I will assess. I go quite deep, to be honest. I do go quite deep into everything that they do, what they sell, how they sell it, how they get clients in. And I do sort of say, if they're saying, well, we're going to introduce this really cheap product line next, and they're a premium brand, I'd be like, why? And people probably hate me for it, but I do say why a lot. And they then have to explain themselves. And sometimes you'll find them stuttering and going, actually, I'm not sure. I just wanted to get the lower end. And I said, but what are your current customers? Are they expecting equality? Are they going to be put out by this lower end product? Is that going to confuse things? So yeah, it's just a lot of questioning and a lot of trying to understand it.
But also, just sometimes you can just rebrand the lower end as something else. So I think if you go back, like Iams Uber, that was their thing, their shtick years ago. I know it's all kind of mixed into one, but Iams used to be the budget brand, and Uber was the premium brand of the company.
Yeah.
And so, like, literally just setting them apart and saying, well, for everyday, normal use, Iams is what you want. But if you're into premium products, then we have Uber. So I think that was their particular shtick at the time, to be honest.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I haven't had that as a particular project yet, but it's a really good shout. And I think if you've got massively varying values, it's hard to badge them under the same thing. So yeah, it definitely would be like a consideration to split two brands.
Yeah. No, I was just wondering, because obviously it's something that I think a lot more people should be doing, to be honest, that maybe they're not, that like they're, I think it's very, very tempting just to see the synergy of an entire brand without actually assessing whether or not the brand reputation is being damaged by, let's say, lower end products. So how do you like go about, like, how did you get into this, and like how did you get your first customers? Because obviously, yeah, I've been in the trade my whole life, but I also know that like when it comes to services around the industry, let's say, especially like services for pet businesses, they can be a little bit stingy, and it can be quite hard to get in with a lot of people. So how did you
Yeah,
get into it originally?
that's the entire creative industry, to be fair.
That was it.
It's
Ah,
always
yeah.
it's difficult. Yeah, it is difficult. So, well, I suppose you get my backstory. So I was in employment just before COVID hit. I had my little boy, so I was on maternity at the time, and I was due to go back to a design position, and I actually got made redundant. And confidence wise, I didn't necessarily think, I can go out and do this on my own. But I suppose I got thrown into it, and doing it with a 1-year-old, that was an experience, let me tell you. But it was, yeah, in terms of getting into the pet industry, I feel like I, I, I suppose I struggled through, and I did great work for people, but I maybe didn't have that job satisfaction of doing something that was in my understanding, within my passion, with, I can probably talk to animals a lot better than I can people. And but a lot of dog people will say the same. So a lot of people that I work with will get that, will understand me as a person, and I'll understand them more as a person. So just purely on a maybe slightly selfish level, I enjoy it a whole lot more with pet people, and I found they get me a little bit more. It's less corporate, it's less stuffy. I don't have to sound like a professional all the time. I don't have to, rock up anywhere in a pinstripe suit. That's just not me. So it just felt that being in the pets industry, it really sort of brought me into my own stride in what I do. And I'm really grateful for my clients and people in the pet industry that I've spoken to, because, I get it. It's bloody hard. For anyone setting up their own business, it's bloody hard. And I have such admiration for anyone doing it. Give or take 16 years now. I was actually married to an abusive fat guy. I don't normally put that out there, but I had zero confidence. I didn't think I could ever be doing what I'm doing now. But what kind of got me through is I had confidence in my abilities. I knew that I could change things for people, and I knew that I could make their businesses perform better. And yeah, pet industry people was just like that extra layer of icing on the cake that made me feel more accepted and welcomed and understood within a community. And yeah, it's just as much for, as a nice thing for me as it is for the people that walk away with a nice new brand.
So I want you to be slightly brutal now. I want you to tell me, like, when you look at, let's say, pet industry brands, there's got to be plenty which you're looking at and going, oof, So tell me, what do people do wrong? What do people do wrong the most?
Oh my God. 100% consistency. 1,000% consistency. So you look at a lot of the brands that are trying to break through, and there's just not that synergy across all platforms. And there's not always that clear message that carries through. When you look at the successful ones, there's one message. People are terrified to repeat themselves. Yet if you look at the successful brands, they repeat themselves all the time. They use the same message on every platform. They use it everywhere. They get, you look at things like taglines and you remember them instantly because they say them so much. So I think if more people would just be consistent, look at the very core of the brand, understand it in a bit more detail, give it a little bit of an audit, which I have a free checklist if anyone needs it, by the way. Look into that core of the brand and really understand it, and just shout that out consistently. Constantly tell people what you are, what you do, what you stand for, It doesn't matter if you've said it 20 times before. It doesn't matter if you've said it 1,000 times before. There's still people that didn't listen the first 1,000 times. So on time 1,001, if you get it right the 1,001st time, someone else will hear and somebody else will buy into that.
I mean, do you still see many brands that out there, let's say, of the bigger ones, or even medium-sized ones, which you're looking at their brands and saying, this could be done so much better?
Oh God, yeah. I'm on a bit of a tirade at the minute with the paw print, and this might offend people. Sorry, we are on the disruptors.
Before you say anything, I hate paw prints and I hate bones on stuff. Those are like my pet hates when it comes to anything pet. Is everybody thinks they've got to slap a paw print and a bone on everything. It drives me mad.
Yeah, me too. Well, it doesn't mean anything anymore. So this using cliche, can I say crap? I'm saying crap. Cliche crap on stuff that it's just lost its meaning. There's nothing to it. You stick a paw print on, it's basically become a space filler. And all it says is we're here for pets. That's it. But you can probably tell that by, you're already on the website. You already know what you're looking at. You don't need that extra thing to say we do pets, because that is literally all you're saying. So things like that do bug me a little bit, and I do want to shake people and say, just, show something else. If we get it, things with paws, move on. What's next? What else do you do? How do you do it? How's it exciting?
Yeah, and I think also, like for me, like the cutesy stuff like that, it's not really that compelling in terms of like consumerism. Like, and when it comes to consumer like buying patterns, like maybe if you're selling toys or something, but like if you're selling food, if you're selling supplements, if you're selling like medicine, if you're selling all these other things, who the hell wants to see a paw? It's like unnecessary. What you want to be doing is actually, I mean, I think like the reason Hills, for example, sounded so good years ago is because Hills Science Diet, and they had like the old brand. They used to have like a beaker on it, like a science, like it was a science project. It kind of makes it sound like, oh yeah, this is dudes walking around in white coats, like like with clipboards, making sure everything's brilliant. It's a compelling image. But if they'd have had like a big paw print, it's like, who gives a shit? It's like I'm kind of all dog food. We kind of know it's for dogs. It's not like you're selling I don't know, Pepperamis or something, and you put a paw print on there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think like just like actually like understanding what it is that's actually inspiring the consumer to buy is really important, rather than being cutesy, which no one gives a crap about.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because that's a real good example. The Hills, that tiny little bit of real estate on that packet, which is about a couple of inches tall and wide, has made such a difference. So the way I kind of put it to people is, you've got a limited amount of surface area to tell people what your business does, especially if you've got packaging. You're sticking it on the shelf. You've got like, I don't know what's the size of I've got a massive 15-kilo bag sat here next to me. So it's about, I don't know, 0.5 meter tall and however much wide. But you've got that. That is all you've got to show people who you are, what you do. Why waste space with just elements that don't say anything? That science brand is really, really good, because you've got instant trust. Who's not going to trust like a scientist or even a vet? There's a lot out there that are like, they'll say in big letters, vet approved. And if you're bringing home a puppy for the first time, you're like, he's going to have the best of everything, this little dog, right, well, the vets say this, so you're going to buy that. If you're in another mindset, you might be, you mentioned the cutesy stuff, you might have bought a little Pomeranian and it looks like a teddy bear and you want to dress it like a teddy bear, then you might go out and buy all the stuff, I don't know, teddy bear related or Disney collection and things like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, I also like Vet's Kitchen as a brand's name. What a great brand name! Like, because it really it makes it sound like there's like a load of vets in their pantry making dog food, as opposed to it just being some fucking kibble, So, but yeah, and the reality is as well, if you have, let's say, a little cutesy dog you've brought home and you want to dress it up and that, are you looking for stuff that makes it look like a dog? I don't really think so. I think people like to put them in humany looking things like hoodies or, like teddy bear outfits or panda outfits or something absolutely ridiculous like that, which makes it, like more humanized or whatever. But they certainly don't go out and buy a dog outfit, And so, but again, this is why I think like the whole paw print, bone print thing, it just became like an overused nonsense that doesn't really attract people. So I think I'm quite pleased that you're against it because it drives me nuts.
Yeah, I know it will offend some people that do have paw prints on packaging and logos, but that's why I'm here. I suppose that's what I'm doing.
So what other services you do? So obviously you've got like the branding and logo element, but then like, is it brand messaging? What is the full range of your services?
Yeah, as part of the strategy, we'll come up with things like messaging and brand voice. I work with copywriters. I work with web designers. So yeah, I've got other people who offer that side of expertise for that. Yeah, the way I say it is everything you need to get your message out there. So anything that's considered a kind of communication. So whether it's your wording, your visuals, your website, even the SEO stuff, I've got people who can come in and help with all that sort of stuff and really get a brand noticed and get it in the right places and get it saying the right things and looking the right way in order to attract the right people.
So the big question is like, what kind of value does like working with you bring to a brand? And like, because obviously things cost money, your time costs money, and like everybody needs a return on investment. So yeah, what is it you bring that like makes you so valuable to pet businesses?
So building your brand and getting it really clear and getting it out there in the right way can be a game changer for a lot of businesses. It can get you more retailers because if it stands out on a shelf from competitors, that's going to get you more retailers, more stockists, and if it then appeals to the end customer as well, they're going to buy it more, which means you're going to get more reorders. You're going to see company growth at the end of the day. That's what people want, isn't it? You want to see your profits go up. And I think what I do, if it's out there properly, I will say a brand is not marketing. You do need both together. But if you have a really, really strong brand, the money that you spend on marketing will be so much more effective. If you have a not so good brand and you're spending money on ads, on marketing, you might not be you could be losing a lot of money or leaving it on the table. It's these potential opportunities. It's hard to say like a specific ROI on things like branding because it's such an intangible thing and it's hard to always attribute it back to that. But if you look at what you spend on marketing and if you look at attracting the right people and if there's a mismatch there, then rebranding to actually connect to those people and to get your message clear and straight and really come out with what the people want to hear and what the people want to buy, what they buy into. Because if they resonate with it and if they understand it more, they're more likely to part with the money. They're then also more likely to pass it on to friends because if someone believes in a brand, they're much more likely to recommend, and that's free marketing. So he's looking at everything as a whole, more opportunities, more growth, more stockists, more retailers, if that's what you're into. Even service-based. I've worked with quite a few service-based brands as well. So if you're looking to attract more clients in the pet industry for pet care, for grooming and walking, etc., if you don't look like every other groomer or walker out there, you're probably going to get a different kind of people. The people that either maybe haven't been to other groomers, or it's funny because I walked past a dog groomers the other day, and it literally looked like a barber's, and I thought that's so cool. It had little chairs and everything. And I thought that is like the coolest. I'd take my dog there if she didn't shed all of her hair. So having something different is really going to attract people, whether it's, even just an experience. People buy into experiences, especially with pets. a moment that you can create with a pet is sometimes just as important as a product you can buy with a pet. So it's a really cool thing.
Because I've heard so many, like, I mean, yourself, like you can hear adverts for things and like branding messages, but sometimes like they're so bad, like even when you want to remember them, you can't. Like you'll hear like an advert for something, that sounds all right, and then 5 minutes later, say, what was that? I literally can't remember what the name of it was or anything like that, or even like how to find them. So it is so important, and like you can be spending a fortune on advertising, and like literally because your name is, let's say, something which sounds like everyone else's. Like, I mean, certain terms and names are overused, and like when people search for them on the internet, there could be like 10 different things that come up with something very similar. So just actually like focusing your brand message and actually having a solid brand name is so important.
Yeah, definitely. And you look at the brands that do really well, and they're like one-word brands. And I much prefer a one-word brand to anything. You've got Netflix, McDonald's, Apple, the big brands that do well. Logic dictates, one word is probably better than 3 words. The less you have to remember, the simpler it is to take in, the more likely you are to remember it.
I also prefer brand names that have nothing to do with the product as well, because like there's nothing like the problem is otherwise you end up with like 10 different companies called something pack or something, or like dog something, or if it's using insects, it's like insect something or bug something, or fly. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and then you just end up with like, what are they called again? Is it like, rather than, let's say, the ones I like are ones where it's just like a single word that's kind of meaningless on its own, and you kind of develop that meaning because of that brand. I mean, like, look at McDonald's. I mean, you say McDonald's, you think of like, fast food, or it's, or Microsoft is computing or whatever. Like, what you want to do is actually have brands that like actually like really you end up attaching what they do to that brand, rather than the brand kind of explains what they do, if you know what I mean, because it's you end up too generic, I think, is the problem.
Yeah, if you go too cliche and too descriptive anyway, it's really hard to trademark. So I always say to people, go for something that is, can you make up a story? You've got the cliche sort of Apple story, which is, Isaac Newton, apple falls on his head, and it's all the innovation that comes from that. So they've got a backstory that not everybody knows, but if you dig into it, there's a story behind why Apple is called Apple. So it's actually quite a fun part of the brand messaging to come up with something around a name. So encouraging people to just think outside the box and don't go with something boring. Think of something else, and it can feed into everything. It can feed into every asset of your branding. And that's definitely a good way to look at it.
And do you do much work in terms of the actual brand names, or do you just get lumped with them generally and say, look, this is my brand? Like,
I do the odd bit of naming. I have to say I've not had loads of naming, but I do. I love naming because it's fun and you can just be a bit wild. So it really gets a bit more of a personality out of someone as well. So yeah, I don't do loads of it, but I'd like to do more of it. So it's kind of a fun exercise.
Yeah, look, I like it. I do like coming up with brand names because I think it's so easy to just do what's boring and come up with like a generic name which describes your product, because they're not searching it for an Apple podcast, they're not searching it like you're out there trying to create your brand and your brand message, and you need to actually have like a strong name behind it, but also something which people can say. That's the other thing. Like you see brands sometimes and like you actually can't pronounce it, or like everybody says it differently, or it makes you think of something else, and then you're saying the wrong thing. So it's a tough job, right? So
yeah, well, you've got cultural things as well. It's like Jif, when people couldn't say J's in certain countries, and they turned it to Sif. So like you've got loads of things to consider. If you're going to be a global brand, or you've got aspirations to become a global brand, you've got to make sure it's pronounceable in every language, every language that you're going to be in the country of. And, that's a minefield as well, because even certain colours mean different things in different cultures. So, yeah, that's why you do the strategy and find out what's the goal, what are the long-term goals. Otherwise, you'll end up, doing a GIF and you'll have to change to SIF halfway down the line, even if you've got an established brand. So, yeah, no, it's really interesting, and I'm a bit nerdy about it. So, got a bit deep there.
Yeah, so if people want to get in touch with you and want to use your services, what's the best way they can get hold of you, Kate?
Probably on my website, so finbostudio.co.uk. And I do offer a free brand check-in, which is sort of a 15-minute call. You send me some stuff beforehand. So if you want me to have a little nosy at your website or your social media and just get a bit of an overview of what your brand is, then yeah, I'll ask you a bunch of questions, tell you what I think as an outsider, and I give people 3 areas to improve on. So even if you don't use me after, you've got 3 decent bits of value that you can work on yourself or go elsewhere for. It's not up to me, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, awesome. It sounds good. And I always think you've got to give away as much information as you can before you actually charge people for information, because again, it gives people the opportunity to actually see the value in you before they actually have to pay. Because we live in a society where there's people who are shysters. So yeah, it's good that you can actually get out and give people the information in advance.
Yeah, that's what I definitely believe in. I think, and not everybody understands where they're doing wrong especially with branding, because it's such an intangible thing. So they might not have thought about something, and putting that into someone's attention is, easier than them digging for. It could be like 3-4 years down the line until someone actually is either brave enough to just say, this is not working for you, or they've missed out on 3 years of brand growth or something like that, because they've missed something that's, potentially a simple fix, and it could really change the game for them.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, Kate.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Amelia.